Welcome to the Social Media Church podcast. I'm Nils Smith, joined by my co-host, and glad to be reconnected with Aaron Magnuson. Aaron, welcome to the podcast.
It's been too long. It's been too long. I mean, I think even since you and I have done a podcast together, I know the podcast has been off for a minute, but since you and I have been in the same room, I feel like we just need to catch everybody up.
Yes. So we are not going away. We're not disappearing, but
No.
It has been a busy season, and we just needed to pause a little bit in our worlds. And you made a major life shift that we have talked about here on the podcast.
Yes.
And a lot of people have asked about, but so we want to update on that. But that has been the reason for the pause. But we are back. We are just and it will probably even be a pause after this before another one comes out, because we typically record ahead a little bit and get some. And this is kind of a real-time update that we are doing before we get back in our new rhythms here in 2022. So Aaron, if you could just update everybody, you moved to Texas. Share for those who maybe don't know why you moved to Texas and what you're doing in Texas.
Well, I'm trying to think where it left off. I do know that it was a little bit unclear in my last update. And I just think before we dive into the update, just first of all, thank you to our listeners who reached out. Some of you reached out on Instagram, some of you reached out on Twitter. And I just think it's the perfect use case for why a podcast really matters. And we've talked about that on here, and we've talked about encouraging church leaders to figure out how to start a podcast, because it's never been easier. And it's a great extra form of content that really, in some ways, even though you still have the barrier of a mic, it removes like the pulpit. Like it just feels like you're in the living room as a communicator, especially of actually really any size church. There's always that barrier of, I just feel like I can't talk or meet with everybody. There's not enough hours in the day. And there's something unique about podcast where it just feels like a fireside chat. It just feels like you've had some people over to the living room. And so being able to have a medium to just spend 30 minutes, it was just me, nobody else was on the podcast. And then to get feedback from our listeners, and specifically those of you who reached out, I really appreciate that. And this is just a reminder to anybody listening that you can reach out. Nils and I love DMs, and we love connecting with you in the DMs after you've listened. We know that your silence doesn't mean that you're not listening. We do know that there's people that we meet that have been listening for a long time that we had no idea about. So we appreciate all of our listeners, but you can always reach out in the DMs. But it was just a really great space where I was able to communicate with all of our audience about what was going on, even though we didn't have all the details. And some of you reached out and, said you were praying for my family. And I just really appreciated that. And so just one more plug to start a podcast. If you haven't done that already, it's a great space to be able to work through your thoughts, to be able to create a connection with your audience. And even if you take a break, that's okay too. You can come back to it. And as Nils and I are doing right now. So yes, in that gap, I think that I had transitioned away from my current job as an online pastor at One and All. And I don't remember if I made it clear what was to come. I don't even think I made mention that I was going to Texas in that podcast. But yes, the landing spot, now that all the dust has settled, is Dallas, Texas. Specifically, Megan and I will be living in Plano, Texas. But we're a part of a church, Shoreline City Church, Pastors Earl and Onika McClellan. Just a great opportunity to continue to do online ministry, and actually quite a bit more at Shoreline City. They were in an interesting season where they're really looking to grow in their online area, but also grow in other areas. And so I was humbled and honored to be thought of to fill a position that didn't exist in their organization as of right now. And some of you may work in organizations that are a little bit more fluid than others. Shoreline City is on the fluid side, where they're more about getting the right people in there, and you wear lots of hats and do lots of different things. And so I'm starting really focused on their online, but we'll see where it goes from there. But just being here, we landed. Well, I drove, but Megan landed. We've been in Texas, living here for about 2 weeks. I just got done with my first week of work. And so now it's, figuring out all the new rhythms and how we can record more of these podcasts, in addition to talking about new ministry, new experiences with new people. So I guarantee you, there will be new voices that you all as listeners are going to get exposed to, because I've made new friends and there's new people doing really cool things that I can't wait to share with you. So yeah, that's where we landed. That's what we've been working on and doing, in addition to doing Christmas and Thanksgiving and trying to keep some sense of normalcy for our family. So yeah, that's what's been going on, Nils.
Yeah, it's a big move, and obviously I am selfishly pretty excited. Well, one and all is a
Yes.
church that I have been close to for many years,
Yep.
and I know they're sad to lose the
Totally.
Magnuson. I know Shoreline City is also a church. It's where Katie and I went to church when we lived in Dallas, and uh,
Yes.
Pastor Earl and Pastor Nika are friends and people that I love, in a church that I've gotten to see. And it's still a very young church, but
Totally. We're
really
about to
see it grow.
celebrate a 10-year birthday
10 years.
in
Yeah,
2 weeks. Yeah.
yeah.
Incredible.
It is incredible.
And one
And
of your
now
daughters got baptized
multi-site.
there
Yeah, my oldest daughter, got
when she
baptized
was
there.
younger. Yes.
Yeah, yeah. And so
So
that
cool.
special. That church is special to us in a lot of ways, and it's been exciting too to hear Pastor Earl's vision for online,
Yeah.
and what that looks like into the future, and really the investment they're making in you and their whole team, and it's going to be exciting. So I would say people are always asking me what churches should I watch
Yeah.
in the realm of online, and people often think of Life Church and Elevation Church
For
and some
sure.
of these other kind of large churches. And Shoreline is a very, very large church, but I would say people are just now becoming aware
Yes.
of Shoreline City, and so I think if you're looking for a church to watch, Shoreline City is definitely
For
a,
sure.
a church to watch that's doing some really interesting and innovative things. I would say that probably one of the most unique things about Shoreline City, from my seat, that's pretty interesting is the leadership talks. So the regular leadership talks that are being put out
Yes.
are just gold, and so that's the thing. I think
Yep.
every church leader, not just looking in and watching, but even being ministered to through those leadership talks, I think you'll find a lot of value.
Totally. And it's a really great strategy that you and I have seen for a little bit now, but I actually got to experience in person for the first time. And it's really just for their serve team. They're very intentional about making leaders, and they feel like the way to accomplish their vision of seeing it on earth as it is in heaven is to do that through raising up Christ-like leaders.
Yeah.
And so they created this extra flow of content primarily for their serve teams, but they post it on their public Instagram. So really it's free game for anybody. And every Wednesday at 9:30 Central Time, we go into the studio, we pray for a good number of things, and then it ends with a great bite-sized 10-minute at most, it feels like. I guess some are maybe a little bit longer, some are a little bit shorter, leadership talk. And they have different staff do it. And I think Nils, one of my favorite parts of Shoreline City thus far that was really impressed upon me from the get-go, just when these conversations started, was just the strong female leadership that they have. And Pastor Onika is an incredible speaker. I feel like her and Earl just about every other weekend are going to different places, different churches, because people want them to grace their stage. And likewise, there's many, many, many people that come to Shoreline City. And I've been told it's because they feel so warmly received. And I can speak firsthand that is true. That's how I felt. And they treat everybody the same, whether you have 5 Instagram followers or whether you got 6-digit Instagram followers or 7-digit for that matter. But what I love about that space, and this might challenge some of you as listeners, it's simultaneously pouring into their serve team, their staff, creating an extra source of content that way. But I think one of the hidden that you might not realize initially until you look at it through this lens is it gives people an opportunity to get reps speaking for short periods of time with a mic in front of a camera. And so really it's a leadership pipeline even within the staff, and the number of people that get to craft a short leadership message involving scripture. It's just so inspiring seeing these I almost called them kids. They're quite a bit young. They just have a young staff, and I'm
Yeah.
old. I'm old with 2 kids, and it's weird being on this side of life. But it's so great seeing these the next generation is really what I'm trying to say. The next generation of leaders get an opportunity to speak life and leadership, even if they don't have it all figured out. We're going to throw a mic in front of your face, and this is your time to get reps. So I almost think of like the Green Bay Packers, right? They've had 3 quarterbacks in like 5 centuries, it feels like, and it's just like they could be doing something, but they're here, they're in the backup role, and they're getting challenged so that when they are called upon, they're ready to go in. And so I just thinking about that in the structure. They're simultaneously creating extra content. And so for all of our leaders listening here, they're creating extra content that's valuable, but they're also creating a space for people to get reps who might not get reps on stage on a weekend.
Yeah, I love it. I would get into social media, but I do want to just say one other thing about Shoreline City is, people, the you and I get to sit in a lot of different rooms with a lot of
Yeah,
different leaders, and people will often ask me, about different leaders, and
sure.
what one of those is Pastor Earl and Pastor Anika, or I guess two of those
Yeah.
people, and are they really like they are on stage? Are they really that happy? Are they really that genuine? And the answer is 100%,
Yes.
and then some. And
Yep.
their staff demeanor, their culture, represents that so incredibly well.
Yes.
Aaron, I'm so pumped for you. It's going to be a fun
Likewise.
journey, and we're going to journey on
Likewise.
this podcast. Sharing
Can
your
I
stories and
just
learning.
brag on them, because I feel
Yeah,
like it's something that you don't see until you've experienced it. And that was certainly Megan in my case. And it was one of those things where, like, you tasted it and you're like, oh man, we have to have this at any capacity, whether we find jobs in Plano and we just attend this church. And when you find leaders like that, because it's not just them, there are other leaders like this out there, but it's rarefied air. I don't know that there are many, but
yeah,
when you find them, you sell everything to go do that. And so we moved here. They had dinner on our doorstep the first night, right, which was completely unexpected when we rolled in. And then after our first service this past weekend, that was my kind of first work day. Our family got to attend all together. Megan and I had attended a service, but it was our first time for our kids. And the next day or 2 days later, we get these Amazon gift cards in the mail, and Pastor Anika and Pastor Earl had written letters to our kids, and telling them to go buy something. Just thank you so much for letting mom and dad become a part of our church, and so, but no one would see that.
yeah,
And you would hear that story and it's like, oh, that's great. I'm sure they do that for everybody, blah, blah, blah. But until you really taste it. And so you can take it or leave it. And then the other way I'll brag on them too is I was in a meeting yesterday as I'm going through onboarding, talking to different staff. And they have an amazing staff member that runs all of their next steps. We call it Growth Track at Shoreline City. Her name is Crystal. And the meeting was over and she just wanted to say, one of the things I wished I had learned, really, that I would have acted on faster, is that my skepticism kind of kept me from really leaning into this culture for about a year. I just wasn't buying it. And I wished I would have done that sooner. And so I just passing that off to you. And so from their staff who've been there, like me, a few weeks, to the staff who've been there for years and years, it's all the same message. So yeah, really great spot. Go support them. If you ever get a chance to listen to them, I would definitely highly recommend doing so if they come and visit anywhere that you are. So yeah, Nils, happy to be here. So happy that we get to do this though. I've
yeah,
missed this. I've missed talking about social media. I've seen Brady Shearer just coming out with, and Kenny Jang, like people are just talking about online church like crazy. And it's been driving me nuts that I haven't been able to create the space for us to contribute our thoughts to everything that's going on. But I just feel like so much has happened even in this little gap with social media. I mean, we're talking NFTs, we're talking, and today, when we happen to be recording this, is when all the platforms, Twitter, Instagram, are coming out with like your NFT profiles, and you can buy and sell, and all. So many things that we can get into, Nils, but I'm just kind of curious, like as we start 2022 and as we look down the barrel of this year, just what can we expect? What are you and I going to be talking about? What are you focused on? Just let's kick off the year. I know it's a few weeks late, but let's kick off 2022 right with a podcast talking about that.
yeah. I did a conference with Dunham and Company, their annual summit
Yes.
in at Disneyland, and so I did a presentation about Web3. And Aaron, that's I think people that follow me on social media see that I'm talking about
They
crypto a
know.
lot, NFTs a lot, and it's really interesting as we're seeing this, what I believe to be the next big shift in the internet and technology, and what's
Yep.
being described as Web3, which is kind of the all-encompassing blockchain technology, cryptocurrency, NFTs, decentralized internet. And so
Yep.
I think it's really interesting and exciting. And I think it's really an opportunity, I believe, for the church to not just play catch up, but to get ahead. And
Yes.
and I was thinking back to even it was probably 12 years ago that the Community Bible Church hired me as a social media pastor, and it was
Wow.
crazy and it was weird. But and I remember spending almost a decade telling or encouraging church members of like social media, like embrace
Yeah.
social media, don't fight
Web
social media.
2.0, Web
Web
2.0. Nils, you
2.0.
spent a decade
Yes.
convincing people, and now
And
Web 3 is here.
And honestly, Aaron, I feel like I'm at a pessimistic point of like, I'm not going to waste my time convincing anybody anymore
Sure.
of like this is changing, this is
Yeah.
developing. And if you can't adapt and adjust, like I say I can, but I feel like it's, you're just going to get left behind. And we saw that with the
Yeah.
pandemic. Those churches that were ahead
Ooh.
of embracing the internet
Yep.
thrived during the pandemic. And those that had rejected it and discouraged it, many of them just died. And it just expedited what was inevitable anyways, prior to the pandemic. And it's not that every church needs to be on the internet, but I think it is that these are tools that can help us further accomplish our goals. These are not, and these are things that can be used to distract our church members, and these are things that can be used to
Yes.
be addictive and unhealthy.
Yes.
But I think we have a responsibility to help people use these things in a healthy way. And I think we have an opportunity to enhance our ministries. So as we look at Web3, I would say, Aaron, the practical thing that I see that every church should be doing now is taking cryptocurrency. And so Given
Yes.
is the company that I work with and am a part of as an advisor. And we
that'll be in the show notes. That'll be in the show notes, but spell it, because it took me. I was in person listening to someone say it, and I was like, "What is it?"
So it's ENGIVEN. And One and All was one of the first churches ever to accept cryptocurrency through Given. But in 2020, I think they had something like 25 nonprofits accepted cryptocurrency and something like $2 million donated in cryptocurrency. In 2021, they grew to over 800 and over $40 million, with the average gift being over $35,000 in crypto.
That's crazy.
It is crazy.
The average gift, that was not a misspeak. And the average gift,
$35,000.
And why is that though? For the people who are still trying to catch up, we've been swimming in this pool for a little bit. Why on earth are people giving that much in crypto?
It's similar to a stock gift, and a lot of the reason why people want to donate in crypto is because when you liquidate your asset, you have to pay the taxes on it. Then you can't donate as much. So people that have a significant amount of crypto that want to help a nonprofit would rather donate the crypto itself, so that the nonprofit can get the full value of the asset rather than liquidating it themselves, having to pay the taxes on the gains, and then donating what's left. And so that's in many ways the primary reason why these large gifts are given in crypto. But I think that number is going to decline, because I think you're going to see more gifts, and they're going to get smaller just naturally as crypto becomes more common.
Would you say the second reason, it definitely, as it becomes more common, because the wealth will be more evenly distributed as more people enter in. But also, one of the things that I think, and this is why it's exciting and why you're recommending this, is not a lot of nonprofits accept it. And so if you're trying to get that tax write-off, how many options do you really even have to donate your cryptocurrency? Which is what you're saying. Churches can actually be ahead of the game in this.
Yes. And I think and this is one of the things that we'll have episodes on this.
Yes.
But at the end of the day, and Given is free. I think it's a 4% transaction fee, which is similar like a credit card fee. They receipt for you. They take care of the tax situations for you. It's just one of these like no brainers. Go sign up.
Totally.
But here's the thing: is they had 800 churches sign up last year. There's a line. There's some just legal things they've got to process through to get your account set up. So don't wait until somebody wants to give you crypto to go sign up. Get signed up.
Totally.
Worst case is you signed up, you spent 15 minutes to sign up, and it takes a year till somebody gives, or you end up using a different platform because you deciding Given isn't the right platform. But the reality is just go take cryptocurrency. I think that's one of the beginnings of Web3. The other, Aaron, that I think is really interesting is Facebook has changed their name to Meta. And so we're hearing the trend of the Metaverse. I'm curious, Aaron, from your perspective, what do you see with the Metaverse, and what do you see in 2022 as you look at the Metaverse?
Yeah, I just think Facebook transitioning to Meta, that is just a great representation of what Facebook has always been. No matter what people think, no matter what the world presents, they are always going to be, as a company, in a position to adapt. And I think that there's a valuable lesson that we can be inspired by and be ready to learn from. I think that there's so much. And so when I hear metaverse and when I think about it, I am thinking about Web3. I'm thinking about virtual reality. That's probably what I've dabbled in the most with their product, their Oculus. And I think we've even made comments about this in previous. Let me rephrase that. I know we've made comments about this in previous episodes. Possibly even years ago, but it's no coincidence that Facebook then came out with their own version, their own product, their own hardware for you to experience virtual reality. And now here we are, where they're going to start capitalizing on that. And so now whether, the metaverse, we've been in a few conversations where we're still bullish on buying a 360 camera and giving your congregants an opportunity for a 360 experience of what's happening at your physical church in the room. Now, our friend DJ Soto and everything that he's doing with virtual reality church, where it's actually church that's happening in the metaverse with avatars that looks really strange. We need to be prepared for that as well. And there are people who are lost and live a lot of their life in this almost second life virtual world, where churches need to exist. And at the very least, church community needs to exist. And so I think that in Facebook, Meta now is actually doing a great job of promoting DJ. I think DJ is coming out with like a masterclass on how to do some of this stuff. And so if you're interested in that, or you own an Oculus, and the stats are staggering for the people who have an Oculus. And I think I see an Oculus billboard or commercial, Oculus $299 everywhere. I mean, I see it at least once a day. And so this is becoming the norm, where there's going to be these experiences that happen that are not reality, that take online church or if you are more comfortable saying the experience of your church online to the next level. Actually, before we hopped on this call, I was telling Nils that somebody reached out to us. They want to translate our website into being a 3D website. And so I was looking at what that would look like. And it's incredible. But it's all of these things are not to be feared. I think this is where we're a broken record, whatever the new thing that comes out is. But let the companies like Meta tell you where to go based on they're gonna set the pace for us. They're gonna come out with a new feature. That's probably the first step you should take. You don't have to, run ahead of them, but be just one step behind them. Let them lead you, guide you, but don't be afraid of testing these things out, because that's when we fall behind. And that fear of testing things out is generally what allows us to miss out on an opportunity to change lives that don't know Jesus.
Yeah, that's so good. That's so good. I think there's just so many exciting opportunities around Web3, and I think and that's what we'll do on this podcast is we'll have DJ Soto on. One of the things that I'll harp on Meta a little bit too.
Yes, because I want to hear your thoughts too, Nils. Dive into it.
Well, I think practically there's two sides to this. It is complicated. A lot of church leaders don't trust Meta as a company, and a lot of people. And Christians and just general population don't trust Meta because of what are they doing with our data? How are we're basically the product that they're selling.
Sure.
And that's for a good reason. I think that there is a level of, and this is where I get excited about Web3 and the decentralization of the internet.
That's right.
Is I think Meta is trying to get ahead of what's happening. Because as they lose access to data and people begin to control their privacy a little bit better, it will be more complicated to sell our data like they have done. So their business model is going to have to change, I believe.
Yes.
That said, I love so much of what Meta does as a company of adapting and adjusting. And I think to your point, Aaron, it's hard for churches to pivot and adjust, but Meta is a company of 500,000 employees, and they're able to totally change their name and adjust, and that has always been Facebook. And they were not just a company that was doing okay, they were a company that was thriving, and they made a mega pivot here from a brand perspective.
Totally.
And so I think there's so much to learn there. The other thing that I think church leaders need to know about Meta, and we've had Nona Jones on this podcast. She's a close personal friend.
Totally.
They also just hired our friend of the podcast, Katie Allred, is on their team.
Oh, that's awesome. I actually didn't know that. That's news for me. That's
Yeah,
awesome.
yeah. She's moved to Nashville and is a part of their team. Now their faith division, which has like 15 employees,
Oh,
which
that's
is
awesome.
primarily focused on now their interfaith, but they're primarily focused on Christian churches,
Yes.
and they're really serving churches in
Yes.
a really incredible way, and so the relationships that they're building, that they're establishing, and they see the church as a market. But I think that's a benefit to us. They're not trying to necessarily use us, but they're trying to resource us. They want us
Totally.
to accomplish our goals, and so
Yes.
that they can help accomplish their goals. And I think there is an opportunity for mutually beneficial relationships where it's not just
Yes.
meta, kind of
Of course.
taking advantage of Christians. And so
Yes.
I am a believer, and I don't think that Mark Zuckerberg is the Antichrist, like I have heard in many Q&As when I'm doing a speaking session. But I do think there is genuine cause for concern when it comes to privacy on the internet.
Yes.
And really, Amazon, Google, and Facebook, or Meta,
Yes.
basically own and run the majority of the internet, and I think that's dangerous.
Yes.
And so,
It is.
um,
But Web
yeah,
3.0 combats that, right? Like that's
100%.
what we're talking about. Where like our data is ours. And
Yes.
so we should be excited about moving into this. And to your point, they're going to have to adjust, or they're dead. They're the dinosaurs that go extinct. Where it's like, how would these ever leave the earth? And then they go extinct,
Yeah.
which could be a whole nother debate as well. But
Yeah.
regardless, yeah, you're totally right. And Web 3.0 protects the privacy, and we're here to walk you through that. That's why this podcast exists. You don't need to do all of the research yourself to know. Just take our word for it. We're in a lot of conversations. We know the we're not going to suggest anything on here, and if we do, we're going to make it very clear that it's
Yeah.
that it's something to experiment with, not for everybody. But the majority of the stuff that we're going to do on here is it's ready for all churches of all sizes, whether you're a staff of one or a staff of many. Coming alongside these big organizations that eventually, when Web 3.0 hits, aren't going to be able to abuse the masses like they have. That might be an aggressive way to say it, abusing the masses, but they certainly have benefited more than everybody else in terms of what they've gained from our data. Won't happen in Web 3, so let's lean in. If
Yeah.
anything, we have more reason to lean into Web 3 than we did Web 2. But yeah, that's a great point, Nils.
Yeah. Aaron, as we look at 2022, I mean, a couple things to point out is, well, one, just practically for us as Social Media Church, we will be hosting our second annual Social Media Church conference this year, and so we've begun those
Yes.
conversations a little bit. We'll be announcing dates soon, and then after that, we'll start announcing speakers and some other things. But
Yep.
you'll want to just stay tuned, and we'll make a big announcement here
That was
on
so valuable last year for our
podcast.
listeners. We're so excited
Oh,
to do that again. That was like, it was valuable to me. Let me
totally.
just say that. But it was, I'm so glad we
Yeah.
did that. It was long overdue. And year two is going to be great.
It will be great, and we learned a lot, and I think it's gonna be a
Yeah,
whole lot better,
for
this year.
sure.
The other thing I think with that is that social media, while there's a lot with Web3, and really, as you look at even Web 1 to Web 2, Web 3, it's not like Web 1 was the information superhighway. Web 2 was kind of the social and mobile development. And Web 3 is going to be the decentralization of the internet, and uh, a lot of other pieces to that. But I
Yeah.
think that it's when Web 2 came along and it became social and mobile, it's not like Google and information went away. It was kind of an
Yes.
addition to. And so as Web 3 develops, Web 2 and social media and mobile is going to continue to develop and expand and be a
Yes.
significant part of the internet and our lives. And so, I think we see right now a lot of churches embracing TikTok, which is exciting. So
Yes.
be talking about that a lot.
We have some guests coming on about
YouTube,
that actually as
I can't
well.
wait.
It's going to be great.
And TikTok is a really a fascinating. I think people assumed it would be a fad that would come and go, and it is definitely not a fad.
Totally.
Instagram is doing some interesting things and always
Yes.
changing. YouTube continues to grow and expand, and it's a whole
Yep.
massive thing in and of itself. And so and podcasting continues to develop and grow, and
Yes.
smart speakers and how that integrates with podcasting and so much of the other content we're creating. I think there's going to be some voice social opportunities and AI
Yes.
technology and translation. And there's so much, Aaron, I think that
Yep.
is happening and exciting, and so many things to talk about. And I wish Man, there's so many episodes. I think that we've got
I
to
know.
record
Yes, we do.
and content we need to create, and so we are. Yeah, we're going to dive in, and we're committed in 2022 to serve this community well.
That's right. And we're going to wrap up here with this, but I do have a question, Nils. Do you know something that we've been doing in Web 2.0 that we need to stop doing? Like it's time to stop and shift our focuses elsewhere. And I didn't ask you this question ahead of time, but that's what I naturally think of, because there are going to be some things that shed away as we move into. Fortunately, a lot of it stays, right? So that all of the rhythms that we've gotten into and all the best parts of Web 2, just in terms of social, the scalability of social, the reach and the community digitally that we've seen that got us through the pandemic. But is there anything where it's just like, it's time to stop doing this? You can, take that off of their plate, and maybe we can clear some room to actually do some experimentation as we prepare, or just double down on Instagram or whatever. Because I think the things that you've just said,
Yeah,
Instagram staying, YouTube staying, TikTok is staying.
yeah,
What should we stop doing though? It's
yeah.
2022. Let's stop doing this.
That's a good question. I'll tell you what I immediately think of, and I'll probably think of something else 10 minutes
Yes.
later and think this is a dumb response. But what I immediately think is that when basically Web 1 came around and it was the information superhighway, churches functioned as if the devil were the internet, and we shouldn't have a website because we're encouraging pornography, which was the primary use of the internet for the first 10 years of
Yeah,
the internet.
that's right.
If we have a church website. And so we didn't do it. And then social media came along and we're like, okay, I guess we should have a website. So when Web 2 came, we embraced Web 1. And now I think Web 3 is coming, and it's kind of like, oh, we need to embrace Web 2. We need to embrace social media. And I think but what we did though too with Web 2 is, even as we started to embrace social media, we treated it like Web 1, as it was a place to market and to promote and to post information, when it was a place. Social media was built for a place to build community and to create interaction. And I think we perceived of, if we create online community, it's not real community, it's unhealthy. We use the term virtual, which I think is often a terrible word to use, because it's not
Yes,
virtual, it's real.
it's
It's
real.
just not physical. It's digital. And so I think as we get into Web 3 is really built on the foundations of decentralization, which at the end of the day is taking away control from, I think, these kind of entities that control the
Yep.
internet, like Meta, like we just talked about in Google and
Yep.
Amazon.
Yep.
And I think we want to control how people behave on the internet, especially when it's our church. And the
Yep.
reality is as the internet continues to develop, practically we lose more and more control. And it's more about us being engaged in what's happening there, not necessarily controlling what's happening there. And so that would be my take: as we move into Web 3, let's not treat Web 3 like Web 2 and stay behind. Let's kind of function the way this technology is shifting and adjusting our
So
behavior
good.
alongside it. That's my immediately think, Aaron. What
Man.
I'm curious, as we wrap up here, where does your mind go
Yeah.
with it?
I think I wake up every day and wonder about Facebook. I think this would be my answer, because just as I was about to say that, I was about to be the other voice that rebuttals myself. I think more than ever, we need to stop being everything to everybody.
Hmm.
And we need to really focus in on, where is our flock? Where is the flock that, especially as pastors, if you're a pastor listening,
Yeah,
or a leader at any level, you need to know where your flock is at and how that flock wants to communicate, and lean all in there. And that could be a couple different places. But I think gone are the days of, well, Elevation does everything and Life Church is on Twitch and does everything.
yeah,
You, they pastor a lot of different flocks, lots
yeah,
of them, and we in the conversations that I'm in, some people are like, "Our people just aren't on Facebook." Okay, great. Facebook groups is not the solution for you, but in the same breath that I'm saying that, I'm also talking to somebody that their congregation is on Facebook and utilizing it. And the unique part of Shoreline City is we actually have actually, we're about to plant another campus. We have two campuses in Guatemala, one in Antigua and one is about to be in Guatemala City. And they're about 10 years behind us. And so nobody really knows what Instagram is, but Facebook is the bee's knees of everything that's going on over there. And so they're you need to understand your flock, and you need to leverage the tools at hand where they are to build community all throughout the week, so that you can continue to disciple them, pastor them, and raise them up to be Christ-like leaders. And so I think if there's anything to stop at the beginning of 2022, it's stop doing everything and stop trying to be everything and stop trying to go viral on everything. That is not a growth strategy. The growth strategy is creating deep, rich, meaningful community, which can be on Instagram, that can be on Twitter, that can even still be on Facebook. And just really focusing in on the relational component of that, and cut the stuff where your people aren't, and stop just habitually reposting there on the off chance that you're going to blow up. I think that would be my advice. And I've been in enough conversations now where that's just wasted energy.
Yeah, that's good, man. Stop wasting energy. That's good direction, good advice. Well, let's as we wrap up this episode. I guess I'm out of practice.
Issue.
Is
that a Web 3.0 thing? You develop issues now?
I just have issues. It's kind of the bottom line here. So it's the end of this episode.
It is.
If you would, and if you are a regular listener, if you would leave a rating and review, it would help us tremendously get this podcast to more people.
Yes.
We believe, and we continue to hear that how important this conversation is to the church, and we appreciate you sharing that with those that you're connected with, and hope that this is a blessing to you and your ministry and your leadership. And we're here to serve you. So reach out to us on social media. Let us know what you would like for us to talk about to help you. That's why we exist.
That's right. And we still have a website. 2022, we still have a website, socialmedia.church. That hasn't gone away. Go visit it. Get on our mailing list, all that.
Yeah. Get on our email list. That's really the best way to stay updated on the latest when it comes to Social Media Church. So thanks for listening. Absolutely. We'll talk to you again on the next episode.